Hello and welcome back to Overheard Online. I am your host, Erin, and today I have a whole bunch of stories prepared for you. So we're going to do things a bit differently where we're just going to dive right into it since we don't have a co-host and try to fit some more of these in for you guys. So without further ado, let's get started. Our first story is called A Very Weird Spine-Chilling Call. Was it a ghost or time slip phenomenon? It's 5 years old and was posted in r/glitch in the matrix. 3 years ago, while working as a customer service representative at a call center, I had one of the strangest experiences of my life. I got a call from a man, we'll call him Mr. Joe, who was upset about his bill and wanted to file a dispute. Normally, those investigations take about 5 business days, so I told him I'd call him back once it was resolved. I saved his number and set a reminder that I should follow up. 5 days later, I called the same number, but this time a woman answered. She said her name was Mary. I asked her if I could speak to Mr. Joe, letting her know that I was calling with good news, that her billing dispute had been resolved and that he'd be getting the correct credits. Mary went completely silent for a moment. Then, with a shaky voice, she said, "That was my husband, but he died 5 years ago." She explained that she actually did have a billing issue herself, but hadn't had the time to call because of her busy schedule. She thanked me for resolving it, but she was clearly very shaken. Her husband, the man who had supposedly died 5 years earlier, had been the one who always handled their bill disputes, and somehow he was the one who called me a few days earlier. That's weird, right? One user commented on the story saying that it really ties into quantum immortality theory. They wrote, "Imagine that Mr. Joe died in his wife's timeline 5 years ago, but in Mr. Joe's own timeline, he's still alive and married to her. In that reality, he called to dispute the bill. Essentially, you got a call from a parallel universe, one where Mr. and Mrs. Joe filed the dispute and never got a call back. In this universe, you resolved the issue, but here Mr. Joe's been gone for 5 years. Sorry if this sounds confusing, but it actually makes a lot of sense in my head, assuming that this story is real, of course." In this comment thread, another former telecom engineer responded, saying, "You'd be shocked at how many calls like this we've investigated. Calls that definitely happened, yet there's no record of them anywhere. Ghosts in the machine is what we would call them. It doesn't usually affect the system, so it gets written off. You'll just see it buried in the trouble tickets as unable to reproduce issue after testing appears to be resolved. No further investigation is necessary." Several other users asked this commenter for some examples as to what he's talking about. And what the telecom engineer said next will have you rethinking every phone call you've ever made. They wrote, "I was in an informal meeting with a C-level executive when he got a call on his personal line. It was his wife. He put the call on speaker and said, 'Honey, you're in the office with,' and then he used some silly nickname for the group. 'What's up?' You could hear her chuckle and start to reply, but the audio was distorted. Something was clearly wrong with the call. My stomach dropped. I knew this was about to become an executive escalation." An executive escalation is basically the telecom nuclear option. It's a direct hotline to the network operating center, bypassing all customer service layers. The person on the other end is at least a RAN technician, sometimes an engineer like me. It's reserved for top executives, partner companies, and a few public figures. In other words, when these people have a dropped call, the entire system pays attention. The call dropped, and the normally easygoing, jolly executive went stone cold serious and said, "Blank, open an executive escalation. I want to know what happened here." Fair enough. We were in his office and I knew every inch of the infrastructure there. It's one of the most closely monitored lines of our entire network. I opened my laptop, loaded my tools, opened the ticket, started a bridge call with my team. We began top down, call trace records first. For anyone who doesn't know, call traces are basically the E164 addresses of every piece of equipment involved in a phone call, from setup to tear down. An E164 address is basically what we call a phone number. That's just the numbering scheme. Anyways, while waiting for the traces, one of my guys asked, just confirming the call happened at this time, ? I said, yeah, about 5 minutes ago. Grab the last 8 hours of records in case it's a pattern. He went quiet for a minute, then said, nope, no call data. I figured maybe he was using System X, which can lag a few minutes. So I used System Y to pull the record straight from the node B, and even ran a System Z trace from my own terminal. Since it's an executive case, I might as well be thorough. I decided to call the executive's wife myself to gather some data, ask her where she was, maybe run a test call. She answered and asked who I was. I said, Mrs. Executive, this is blank. Your husband opened an executive escalation for the call that had just dropped between you two. I just have a few questions about the call. She laughed and said, wow, you guys are fast, investigating calls that haven't even happened yet. Excuse me? I asked her to clarify. She said, well, I was just about to call my husband, but my phone had no service. I told her, no, ma'am. I mean, the call you just had. You were saying X, Y, and Z when it dropped. We're looking into it. She said, I was going to call about X, Y, and Z, but I definitely didn't call yet. Are you guys doing a thing where you turn my phone on and listen to me while I'm not using it? Then she laughed again. I forced a laugh, asked a few more generic questions, and then we hung up. So here's the thing. I heard the entire conversation. It matched exactly what she said she was about to call him about, but no call had ever occurred. We had no records. She claimed it never happened. There were no records on her end. Our report read, no issues identified, test calls terminate normally, probable crosstalk. If further investigation is required, reopen ticket and attach example of call data. It happens all the time. We just investigate it, close the ticket, and then continue doing our jobs. So what are some themes or theories that came to mind when I was reading the story? So there is this idea of paranormal communications, which is the alleged communication between the living and the deceased through non-traditional means, like radios or phone lines or electronic media or TVs, things like that. Think, was it Poltergeist? Was the movie Poltergeist where they communicate through the TV? It's definitely something that comes up oftentimes in movies and TV shows. But the idea here being that people who have passed somehow can use electronic waves to communicate with the living. In this case, that idea, which by the way has not been scientifically proven or tested, although there is a lot of pseudoscience of different scientists or different people trying to study the phenomenon, but looking at situations that people claim that things like this have happened and cross-comparing them, so nothing that can be properly tested. But the idea being that a loved one or a spirit could connect with the living using electronic means. And in this case, it would suggest that the husband who has passed knew about the issue. He was the one who always dealt with it, so maybe he communicated with the cell phone company. And then the other big theme would be quantum immortality and maybe a breakdown in the veil that separates two parallel universes. So like the first commenter had suggested, that would be the idea that there were two parallel universes, and for whatever reason, maybe the husband in a parallel universe was making the phone call. He somehow got through to the technician in the parallel universe where the husband had passed away, and there was some overlap where both of the universes interacted for a split second, and there was crossover. And in the universe where the husband is not deceased, where he's still alive, the ticket would be lost. He'll be aggravated that no one got back to him and that there's no record of the call. And in this universe, the call would have gone through, but in following up, they would have this odd scenario where the husband is deceased and wouldn't have been able to call. Now, why would this potentially be happening in these telemarket places? Maybe in places where there's a lot of phone calls going in and out constantly, Maybe it just is a hub where that veil could break down. If there's a lot of parallel universes where it's possible that several people could be making the call at the same time, and there's a lot of electronic waves going in and out of a hub, maybe that just is somewhere where the crossover could happen if that hub exists in two parallel universes and that call seems to be happening or meant to happen in two universes. But who knows? Anyways, those are some of the main themes that sort of touch on this story, but let me know your thoughts in the comments, and please tell me if you have had any experiences that resemble this one, or if you have any firsthand knowledge of this happening to a loved one or somebody that you know, because I'd love to hear it. Moving on to our next story, which also has to deal with glitches and phone lines. This story was posted 10 months ago in r/glitch in the matrix, and it is called Dialed the Wrong Number, but Found Who I Was Looking For. I'm dating myself here, but this happened back in the mid-'80s. I was calling my girlfriend from a payphone. I don't remember why, but I was dialing her number from memory. I'm not even sure if I dialed the right number, but when I asked for my girlfriend by name, I heard confusion in the woman's voice who had answered. She said, "Hold on one moment." A few seconds later, I realized I hadn't been connected to my girlfriend's house at all. I had somehow accidentally called one of her mother's friends, the exact house that they had stopped into for a visit. How that happened, I have no idea. One commenter responds to the story saying, "I was standing on a corner in the 1980s, waiting to cross the road when a payphone on the street started ringing. I picked it up. It was the wrong number, but I knew the person on the other end." The city had a population of about 1.5 million at the time. Another user responded to this comment saying, "The same thing happened to me once. Walking in San Diego, a payphone started ringing. I answered, and it was for me. As God is my witness, I'm telling the truth. What the hell?" In a new comment thread, somebody writes, "That happened to me too once. I couldn't remember my friend's number, so I just dialed the first number that popped into my head. Turned out I dialed his friend's house, and he just happened to be visiting that friend. No idea how it happened." Another user writes, "This happened to me back in early 1990s. My girlfriend and I were playing around with a Ouija board. Bad idea. Don't do it. Asking normal 13-year-old girl questions like, who will I marry? How many kids will I have? How will I die? When I asked the Ouija board who I'd marry, it gave me a first name. Then I asked how many kids I'd have, and it said 2 boys. My best friend laughed and said, what's his phone number then? The blanket started moving and spelled out a local phone number. We freaked out, but we called it anyways. On speaker. A woman answered, and when my friend asked for the person by name, the woman said he wasn't in and offered to take down a message. My friend panicked and hung up. Less than a year later, I started dating a boy with the same name and the same phone number. I know it's the same number because we had written it down in a notebook that same night. None of us knew him then. He was in high school and we were still in the 8th grade. A couple years later, I told his mom about it. She said she remembered that phone call and she thought it was a bunch of girls just prank calling him. We dated all through high school. I honestly thought we'd get married. We didn't. We're both married to other people now. But that's the weirdest part. My husband also has the same first name. And my high school boyfriend, the one from the Ouija boards, he has 2 boys, just like it said." Somebody else chimes in with their experience saying, "Back when everyone carried pagers, I worked in a call center that handled messages for them, about 200 employees total. One day, my friend was about to call the center to leave me a message, but before she could dial, her phone rang. She answered, and it was me on the other end. Thing is, I didn't call her. Our system worked automatically by dropping calls into our headsets with a beep. And when I heard one, I answered like normal. We were both very confused." Another commenter writes, "Back in the landline days, this happened all the time. I'd pick up the phone to call somebody, and instead of the dial tone, I'd hear them say, 'Hello?' We'd both had the same idea at the same time, and one of us picked up a second later. Save time, honestly. I miss landlines, especially before caller ID, star 69 or answering machines. If no one was home, there was no way of knowing somebody had called. Wild to think about that idea now. And if you were waiting for a call from a crush, you could tell yourself, oh, they probably called while we were out. Now with cell phones, we don't get to lie to ourselves like that anymore. Someone else writes, I'm so glad to see that other people have had similar things happen to them. After high school, I changed my phone number and even my legal name. Not long after, my grandmother got a call and a voicemail saying that my old name needed help urgently. Here's what shook me. At that exact time, I'd been struggling emotionally and praying that somebody somewhere would hear me. And the message that was left from my grandmother had come from my old phone number. Someone had apparently dialed it by mistake, saying a person with my old name needed help, and my name was spelt in the uncommon way that I used to spell it. My grandmother, being very spiritual, reached out immediately. We had a long, heartfelt talk that really helped me through that time. This next story still touches on electronic glitches. It was posted in r/glitch in the Matrix 5 years ago and is called My Wife Replied to My Idea on Livestream, and she has been deceased for 2 years. I'm a small-time YouTuber and Twitch streamer, nothing monetized. I do it as part of my therapy. I'm severely disabled, and gaming has been my outlet since my wife passed away in 2018. She was a gamer too. One of our favorite games was Star Trek Online. After she died, I kept playing. It has helped me cope. On the afternoon of January 9, 2021, I was streaming STO like usual. I was mid-mission blowing stuff up when I saw a ship I really liked, one using cannons. I got excited and started talking about making one for my Klingon character. That's when it happened. My wife answered me live on stream. I know how that sounds, so I'll go through everything point by point. It wasn't in-game audio. I had the clip checked by an audio engineer. The voice registers in the 400 megahertz range, and it's clearly coming from inside the room, not through the computer. The voice was recorded through a mic, an AAT 2020, not my game's audio feed. It's also heard in real time through the open back headphones, which means it wasn't just a playback artifact. I had no speakers or devices running that could have produced it, and I'd been in self-isolation for 12 months, so no one else was in the home. In the video, you can even see my dog, who looks off to the side, right towards where the sound came from. This wasn't the first strange thing that I had experienced since my wife passed, but it was the first time something like this has been caught live, and my analytical brain just can't explain it away this time. The voice sounds exactly like hers, same tone, same gentle response, exactly how she used to answer me during the game. I'm not trying to convince anyone. I shared it because I wanted honest feedback and different perspectives. Since my wife has passed, and honestly, even before that, weird things have been happening to me. I used to shoot them down as coincidences or imagination. Now I'm trying to look at things with more of an open mind, not to blindly believe, but just to reevaluate things as they come. OP in this instance did include a clip of the incident, and so I will attempt to insert that here if I'm able to. If not, I will include a link below. After the clip was posted, the comment section split pretty quickly on what had happened. A few people said that they watched and rewatched the video but didn't hear anything unusual until they realized that the streamer had actually said something that might have sounded like, "Hey Siri." They noticed that the response, the short sound, was almost identical to how Apple Siri reacts when she's triggered by a voice command. One commenter even pointed out that Siri does that same quiet acknowledgement all the time on their device, and that it might just be a case of voice recognition picking up on similar syllables. Another user was more direct, saying it probably wasn't anything paranormal at all, but just a Bluetooth or iPad glitch. They questioned why the streamer didn't react right away if he truly believed it was his wife's voice, and why the dog didn't seem as startled as they would expect. The streamer had responded to a bunch of these comments, explaining that, one, he is autistic, which means he doesn't always react outwardly to sudden events. He said that in the moment he had noted the event and then continued screaming so he could analyze it later. He also clarified that his only Siri-enabled device is an iPad that was upstairs in another room at the time of the event, and that there is no Bluetooth connection to the living room, so he doesn't believe it could be Siri. Eventually, a moderator did pin a comment comparing the video clip's waveform to Siri's actual sound response. According to the moderator, the two are incredibly similar and match pretty perfectly. The moderator also said that it is likely that Siri had been accidentally activated when he said, "in theory," which phonetically sounds similar to "Hey Siri." Even the streamer agreed that this is possible, although, again, he kept noting that he doesn't have a Siri-enabled device in the room, so he wasn't sure how the sound could travel that far. And because of that, we got an edit. In this edit, our OP writes, "After reading everyone's comments and testing all possible explanations, I do believe it could possibly be a paranormal event rather than a glitch. The timing, the location, even if it was Siri somehow, it would have had to travel from upstairs to the living room behind the chair. So I've decided to investigate. I've set up an EVP room with some of my late wife's favorite items, ordered a proper recorder, found my old EMF meter, and removed all wireless devices. Over the next few weeks, I'll be documenting what happens. I'll share it all, whatever I find. Whether it's technology or something beyond it, that voice sounded just like my wife's." Our next story is from Glitch in the Matrix, and it is 5 years old. It is titled, "This is the creepiest thing I have ever experienced." If I told you what I saw last night, you probably wouldn't believe me. Honestly, I can't even believe it myself. It is the scariest thing I have ever experienced, and even talking about it makes me feel like I am crazy. But here it goes. It was around 2 a.m. I was doing laundry with my oldest son, and after we threw everything in, we decided to hit McDonald's to grab something to drink. The drive-thru was packed, maybe 5 or 6 cars ahead of us, but no one was moving. We sat there for about 5 minutes. Still nothing. No cars were moving. So I decided to pull around the car in front of me and use the next lane to do so. As I passed them, I glanced over just to see what was going on. And I swear to you, both people in that car, the driver and the passenger, looked dead. Their heads were tilted all the way back, eyes closed, completely still, not asleep, not dazed. They looked dead. I freaked out. I slammed on the gas and tried to pull out of the drive-thru completely, going around the other cars to get out. But as I passed the next one, same thing. Every passenger and every driver that I passed had their heads back and their eyes shut. It was like something out of a movie, the rapture or the end of the world. I was panicking. My son saw it too. We thought maybe there'd been a shooting or that somebody had poisoned the food, or I don't even know what. We just floored it and got the hell out of there. Once we got out of there, I was shaking, hyperventilating. I couldn't even talk. My son had to call 911 for me. He told them what happened, and a few minutes later, an officer called us back and said he checked it out and everything was normal. Normal? We asked in disbelief and confusion. They said that there was nothing unusual happening at that McDonald's. But we both saw it, me and my son. There were at least a couple of cars, and the people in them looked dead. I still can't explain it, and it makes my skin crawl trying to. My friend said maybe we experienced some kind of glitch. I never even heard of a glitch before. All I know is I'm still terrified, and I don't know what we saw that night. And it is the scariest thing I have ever experienced. So some of the users in the comments were trying to figure out explanations as to what this could have been, and one suggested that it might have been a protest. This theory was linked directly back to the June 2020 killing of Rayshard Brooks, a Black man who was shot by police after falling asleep at a Wendy's drive-thru in Atlanta. In the days that followed, there were protests that occupied the Wendy's parking lots for weeks. Some even set up tents and blocked the lanes in tribute and protest. One user, he had suggested that maybe people were staging some sort of protest as a silent demonstration and that they were reenacting the scene to make some sort of point. The original poster did respond to some of the protest comments saying, "It was 2 a.m., nobody was protesting with signs and there was nobody walking around. There were about 5 cars, none of them were moving. The police must have been there within 10 minutes of us leaving, and they claimed everything was fine and cleared out. Another commenter had chimed in saying that the same thing had happened to them the night before it had happened to OP. They said it was around 4 a.m. at their local McDonald's. One drive-through lane was closed. They sat in the other one for 10 minutes before pulling around to see why nothing was moving. They described almost the same scene. Drivers slumped over, heads on steering wheels, eyes open, but no one was blinking. To quote the comment, they say, "The passenger's forehead was on the window, eyes open, just staring at the ground. I literally jumped out of my car to check. They were slumped over in the passenger seat." They said that they thought it might have been a gas leak, so they fled the area, called 911 and got home, but never heard back from anyone. I did take some time to look into this theory. There are verified articles about a protest or several protests. There were pieces in Atlanta Magazine and Routers showing how the Wendy site became a full-time protest zone. So in that sense, the idea isn't coming out of nowhere. There really were some demonstrations connected to drive-thrus and protests of somebody being shot who fell asleep in their car. But when I looked into any reports of people staging a late-night frozen car protest with cars lined up and moving at around 2 a.m., I couldn't find anything with any local or national coverage on that sort of protest. The protests that I did verify were all happening during the day. They were occupations of the parking lots, marches, vigils. I didn't see any reports of quiet reenactments, and especially none of them happening at McDonald's lots or other types of drive-thrus outside of just Wendy's. So while the timing of the Reddit story and this other person's story happening around the same time of these protests does sort of fit, the protest being something that is a sort of stage-in or reenactment, that I couldn't find anything on. We'll move on to our next story, which was posted 6 years ago in Glitch in the Matrix. It is called, "My Whole Life is Different, and No One Believes Me." I'm not sure if this is the right place to post this. The Mandela Effect forums don't allow personal stories, only ones with proof. So here it is. This Wednesday, February 5th, on my way to work, I stopped at my usual gas station. I go there every day, 5 days a week. But when I walked in, everything was different. All new drink stations, the food area completely redone. None of this was different on Tuesday morning, and I just couldn't believe they remodeled an entire gas station overnight. Then I went outside and noticed that 2 gas pumps were gone, and in their place were stacks of mulch bags. None of that had been there the day before either. I left, headed to work, and somehow I turned onto the wrong street. I had been driving these neighborhoods for months. I know them, but suddenly I was lost. When I finally got to work, I was panicking. I know it sounds silly, but I've always had a fear of changing timelines. My fiance and I even have a timeline safe word, so that we'll always know that we're in the same timeline together. So I called him. And when I asked, he had no idea what I was talking about. We had just discussed it at the end of January. We had had it for a while. I've even woken him up after having several nightmares and asked him what it was, and he had always known what to say. But now, all of a sudden, he doesn't remember any of it. Then at work, things got stranger. I work in an addictions group home, and one of the girls kept saying how confused she felt, how nothing made sense that day. Later, another girl said all she wanted to do was cry, and she didn't know why. Then, while running errands, I went down a street I drive every single day. And suddenly, there were 4 houses missing. They were completely gone. And in their place was a grove of trees. I had never seen them before. They're right next to a building my family owned for 20 years. I know that neighborhood by heart. The final straw happened when I called my mom. She said my sister was going out that night with her friend, someone who I had known since 2003. So I asked how much longer until she has her baby. My mom went silent. She asked what I was talking about. She said her friend was never pregnant. I looked her up online, nothing. Then I asked my sister half an hour ago about it, and she laughed in my face. She told me her friend is infertile and will never have kids. I remember the day my sister told me that her friend was pregnant. She said, "Guess who?" and I guessed 3 names before landing on the one we were talking about. I vividly remember it. What the hell is happening in my life? We have an edit from OP. She writes, "I really appreciate all the kind messages people have sent. The whole experience has been really terrifying. For everyone asking questions, I've already taken an extensive online schizophrenia test. I did that Friday night. It said I'm fine, very low probability. As for CO2 poisoning, there's no gas in my home or at work. Everything is electric. I opened up to my fiance about all of this and had him read what I wrote. He remembered the day but didn't realize how shaken up I was. I even asked him if I'd shown any signs of mental instability or Alzheimer's. I'm 25, and he said no, just some mild anxiety when life gets hectic. For the record, we created that safe word as a kind of joke after I read the Bernstein Bears theory, but it became something we actually used, especially when I'd have nightmares. The day before all this happened, everything was completely normal. Wake up, work, home, eat, sleep. The only strange thing that night was a sound I had heard, like a scream or a yell, right as I was falling asleep. I brushed it off at the time, thinking it was probably just sleep paralysis, or maybe it was part of a dream, but now I just don't know. Moving on to the comments, a Redditor writes, I can't believe somebody else is going through this. I honestly thought I was losing my mind. About a month ago, it was a Monday, my dad finally set up a new TV. And that night, my whole family decided to watch an old movie. The movie was about timeline changes and the butterfly effect, which now feels ironic. I fell asleep right after it ended, and when I woke up, everything was different, though I didn't realize it at first. The first strange thing was a text I received from a friend that I hadn't spoken to in at least 6 months. Just a simple, hey, I thought it was weird but brushed it off. Then I go to school and my 3 best friends, people I've been close to for years, weren't talking to me at all. I had to start the conversation, which I never have had to do in the past. Their replies were short, one-worded answers, quick laughs, and then they just go back to talking with one another. When class started, I noticed that they didn't sit near me. We always sat together. A few days passed, and finally, I demanded to know what was going on. One of them said I'd done something wrong recently, but couldn't explain what. The others just avoided eye contact. I can't describe how heartbreaking that was. These were my closest friends. One of them since middle school. We had just gone to the movies together the weekend before and everything had been fine. I ended up pretending to be sick so that I could leave school that day early. When I got home, I asked my sister where our cat was because the cat had always been my comfort when things go wrong. I found him as a kitten years ago with that same middle school friend. My sister just said she didn't know. Our cat could always go out onto the balcony and climb the big tree in the yard, but he never left the property. My parents told me that they thought he ran away, but I can't accept that. It's been a month now and he still hasn't come back. That's just the big stuff. There are smaller, subtler changes too. Like how the restaurant my friend and I always went to after school is now completely closed. The neon sign is gone. It's just deserted. Since all of this happened, I've fallen into a deep depression. I've started therapy because I honestly don't know what else to do. Thank you to everyone who listened to my story all the way through. In another thread, a commenter writes, I know I'm a little late to this thread, but I'm wondering how the original poster is doing now. I haven't checked their profile yet for updates, but I hope things have gotten better for them. OP responded to this comment saying, Thanks for asking. I'm doing all right. It was terrifying to go through and even harder to process mentally afterwards. I've since talked to my doctor, taking some psychological exams, and everything has come back normal, which somehow makes the whole thing even more confusing. The doctors looked at me like I was crazy, but physically and mentally have all concluded that I'm absolutely fine. There are still a few small differences in my life since that night, but nothing major. I've just had to accept that I may never know what happened to me that day. This next story is 5 years old and was also posted in r/glitch in the matrix. It's titled, A Friend Apparently Coming from the Future Gave Me an Important Envelope. It happened on October 23rd, 2015. I know the exact date because I sent an email about this to a friend that same day. You'll understand why it matters later. I was playing a game on my computer when I suddenly saw a blast of light through the living room window, coming from the balcony. At first, I thought a transformer outside must have blown. I got up to check, but before I reached the door, someone rang the doorbell. When I opened it, one of my old friends from Canada was standing there. Her hair was a mess, she had bruises all over her face, and her leather jacket was ripped and dirty. She looked panicked. She handed me an envelope and said, in a rush, that I needed to read it and follow the instructions. Before I could even speak, she was running down the stairs. I followed, but by the time I reached the bottom, she was gone. I searched around, but there was nothing. I figured maybe she'd climbed the backyard fence and somehow got out. I called her phone to see if I could hear it ringing nearby. I didn't, and she picked up. When I told her what happened, she thought that I had lost it. She had no idea what I was talking about. I told her that the joke wasn't funny. She insisted that she hadn't left her house. I asked her to video chat and she agreed. On the call, she was sitting at home, thousands of miles away in Canada. No bruises, no panic. In no possible way could she have traveled that distance or changed her appearance in those 2 minutes that it took for me to look for her. I thought, okay, maybe this is some insane doppelganger coincidence. When I went back inside, I opened the envelope. Inside was a piece of paper with a USB stick taped to it and 8 pills wrapped in plastic. There was also a note in her handwriting that said, "Hi, it's going to take me too long to explain. Can you send me these through the mail? There are 8 doses that need to be taken at fixed times. Thanks." At the bottom of the note, there were 3 small drawings, things I recognized as hers. It creeped me out because the handwriting was definitely hers. So I plugged in the USB drive. The only thing on it was a single notepad file that said, "Look at the date, dude." When I checked, the creation of the date was October 23rd, 2025, 10 years in the future. I called my friend back. Now she's the one getting freaked out. I took photos of everything and emailed them to her. She confirmed it was her handwriting and said she recognized the drawings. She said that they were little doodles she used to draw with her best friends back in elementary school, something nobody else would have known about. I followed the note's instructions and mailed the package to her in Canada. Not long after, her best friend became very sick. Doctors couldn't figure out what it was. They thought it was just stress, but it kept getting worse. My friend told her about the weird story, and in desperation, her friend decided to try the pills, in case they were meant for her. Either it worked or it was a coincidence, but she got better slowly, week by week, and then recovered. I still don't know what really happened that night, but I can't stop thinking about it. Maybe in 2025, we'll finally understand the rest of the story. After the story was posted, the comments were filled with disbelief. People had very specific questions and wanted to vet the story. One user asked, "Did your friend look 10 years older when she came through the door, apart from the bruises?" The original poster responded to that saying, "Good question. Her visit caught me by total surprise and it happened so quickly. Her face was covered in dirt and bruises, so honestly I didn't notice if she seemed older or not. I wasn't looking for that kind of detail at the time. I thought it was her, not some kind of future version of her. To be fair, she hasn't changed that much in the last 6 years, so I guess in 4 years from now she won't change that dramatically either. She'll be 35 in 2025. So something rare happened in the comment section here, which is the friend in the story does chime in and they start commenting from their own account. They write, "Hello guys, I can testify that I am the friend in the story. I am not sure how exactly I'm supposed to respond to a thread like this, but I'll make a list based on what I noticed in the comment section. I acknowledge receiving the note that had shown the screenshots. While I don't have any recollection of writing it, I do recognize that it's 100% my handwriting, and that the 3 symbols at the bottom hold secret and special meaning between myself and a best friend of mine that no one else could have guessed. The pen drive I received in the mail was, as far as I know, identical to one I already owned at the time. It was a limited edition drive given to students at my school, and even the imperfections seemed to be the same. I confirm the email was sent to me. I still have it in my Hotmail and Gmail archives. It is true that he called me in a panic that day. We started the conversation on the phone and continued it through Skype. I don't know anything about time travel, and I still don't own my own leather jacket yet. I still think I have the note and pen drive somewhere in a box at home, but it's been a while and I'm not sure where the box is right now. My best friend did take the capsules, as the original poster had said. I don't know what else to add. Feel free to ask me questions, I guess." Someone then replied to her suggesting a way to test the story scientifically, saying, "If you can find both USB drives, the one that was already yours and the one that was attached to the note, check the serial number and the UUID of the hardware. UUIDs are unique. If they both have the same number, then this might be a real case of time travel." The friend responded saying, I wasn't aware of the existence of UUIDs. Thanks for sharing that info. I'm currently still trying to find the pen drive at home now. I'll update as soon as I find it. Later on, the original poster added to this common thread saying, she finally found the USB stick and took pictures of the ID. It's not the ID you were talking about, but let us know what you're looking for and how to proceed. This exchange between the original poster, the friend, and a Redditor trying to figure out how to cross-compare the two USBs gave the story some credibility. While it's not proof, it appears that there are people involved who have physical evidence of something and they're trying to test it, and that there's something verifiable that exists that raises questions that make it harder to explain what the circumstances of the story were. Our next story, which is also 5 years old and posted in r/glitch in the matrix, is titled, I Lost My Daughter Glitch. Hey, so this just happened and I can't shake this eerie feeling that something just isn't right. Let me start by explaining the layout of my house. When you come in, there's a little hall. Directly in front is a bathroom. To the left, a small kitchen, then a door, and then past that is my bedroom. It's big enough that I've turned it into a living room. Right next to it is my daughter's bedroom. Everything is shaped like kind of an L. I'm 24 and I live alone with my 2-year-old daughter and our 2 pet bunnies. We had just finished lunch. It was getting cold and dark, so we went into the bedroom and closed the door to the kitchen. My daughter always plays between my room and hers. They connect directly. I was reading some Reddit stories, half listening to her chatter. It was the usual, her talking to herself, singing, moving her toys around. Then suddenly, the house was completely silent. At first, I thought she was up to something, so I got up to check. There's no way for her to go outside without opening the creaky kitchen door right in front of me, and she's terrified of the dark, but she wasn't in her room. I called her name, nothing. Checked her closet, under the bed, inside her little tent, toy chest, my bed, the sofa, the desk, nothing. She was gone. I started to panic. I searched the kitchen anyways, nothing. The bathroom, empty. I went back to her room again, and that's when I heard crying, coming from outside of the house. I looked through my daughter's window and saw her lying on the ground. She was only wearing a t-shirt, not the one she was wearing earlier, but one that she does own. I ran outside, almost fell down the steps, but when I opened the door, it was silent again. No crying, no daughter, nothing. I searched everywhere again. No sign of her, no sound. Finally, I went back inside to call 911. When I walked into my room, there she was, sitting on the floor, calmly playing with her blocks like nothing had happened. She was wearing the same clothes as she was before anything had happened, and the t-shirt that I had just seen her wearing outside was neatly folded inside of her wardrobe. I'm still in shock. I'm just sitting here staring at her, afraid that if I blink, she might disappear again. Our next story reads like something straight out of a psychological thriller. It's titled, This Might Just Be an Extremely Strange Coincidence, but I Found My Own Grave. This has to be the strangest thing to ever happen to me. I discovered it a few months ago, and it's played on my mind ever since, especially because I've been dealing with a lot of health problems recently. Last year, my dad passed away. We visit the graveyard often. We go to see him and other family members who have passed. It's a Muslim graveyard, and the headstones usually include the father's name and the family's details. On one of the visits to the graveyard, I found, near my uncle's grave, just in front of it, that there was another family gravestone, and it had my name on it. It was the same first name, same last name, even spelled the same way as mine, and my name isn't a common one. The birth date, also the same as mine. It gets even stranger. My dad, who also had an uncommon spelling to his name, was from a small village in Kashmir. On the grave, the name of the person's father was the same name as my dad's, with the same unusual spelling as his. And the stone said the father was from a village, and the village listed my dad's exact village. I know people from there, so I asked around to see if anyone had heard of another person with that name. Nobody had. No one seems to know who the person was. So yeah, maybe it was just an extremely strange coincidence, but I found my own grave and I can't stop thinking about it. We have 2 commenters here that share a similar experience. One commenter writes, about 6 years ago on Halloween night, I did a haunted building ghost tour in an old wood mill town near my house. There was a graveyard nearby, which the tour walked through. I was walking by a row of gravestones, and one in particular caught my eye. I was just drawn to a unique detail of it. I looked at the other side since it was only about 2 feet tall, and it had my name, same middle initials, and my birth date. But with the years being in the 1880s, the person had died at the same age I was when I looked at the grave. It was a surreal experience, but I still think about it to this day. Another commenter added, when I was in 6th grade, we watched a movie about the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. I noticed something when they were showing video of the wall itself. After class was over, I went to my teacher and said, your name is on the wall. Looking back, it was probably a really creepy experience for him. Anyways, we rewound back to the part that I saw, and there it was. His exact name was on the wall, but he had no idea who the person was or if he was related to them or not. And last but not least, our final story is only 1 month old. It also was posted in r/glitch in the matrix. It is titled, Our Missing Desk Drawer Turned Up 12 Years Later on the Street. This is the freakiest thing that has ever happened to me. About 16 or 17 years ago, we bought a desk that had a big drawer. This was my wife's pride and joy, and when it was about a year old, our place had gotten broken into. The robber jumped through the window onto the table. This matters because the table and the front of the drawer were scratched during the robbery. We moved houses and cities, and the drawer stayed in storage for about 3 to 4 years. When we got it out of storage, the drawer was missing. That was about 12 years ago. I have been hearing, literally for the last 12 years, how I must have lost the drawer, that it was my fault, and what a shame it was that the drawer was missing. Cut to last weekend, we went back to the city we used to live in for a few days holiday. We were walking down the street a few blocks from where we used to live, and the topic of whatever happened to that desk drawer came up. I was like, not again, just drop it, finally, please. Then literally a minute later, leaning against the wall of an apartment block, this is in Germany, and people who want to get rid of their old furniture tend to leave it on the street for others to take, was a black desk drawer. We both looked at each other like, WTF? When we go closer, we realize it's identical to the one that we had lost. It even has the same scratch marks on it. How could this be? We were completely dumbfounded. We took it with us and, to our absolute amazement, it fit right into our desk. Our freaking desk drawer turned up on the street a few blocks from where we used to live approximately 12 years later. The chance that somebody had it for that long and decided to throw it out the exact evening we passed by 12 years later is just mind-blowing. We have no idea how, where, when, or why it went missing, but after all these years, we were somehow reunited with it. Can someone calculate the odds of something like this happening for us? Digging into some comments for this last and final story, the top commenter writes, the universe must have finally said, all right, fine, will she please stop talking about this desk drawer already? Here, we'll give it back to you. In another thread, somebody writes, I totally believe this. Similar things have happened to me more than once. Years ago, I had a game cartridge vanish, like completely gone. I searched everywhere. Then, years later, it just appeared, right in the middle of an empty shelf inside of a cabinet I had cleaned all the time. I'd opened it every week or two to dust, and it was always empty, until one day it wasn't. The game cartridge was just in there. Then again, when I was a teenager, I lost a ring. It disappeared into nowhere. About 2 years later, I found the same ring lying on the ground at a bus stop near my house. It was definitely mine. It was a one-of-a-kind, something I bought overseas, and had the same tiny imperfections. There was no way it could have been there, but somehow it was. And finally, a commenter writes, My godparents retired to the Sicily Islands, and when their furniture was delivered, they realized one thing was missing: an antique wine cooler with brass handles. Nothing else was gone. That was the only thing. A few weeks later, they were walking down the high street at night after leaving the pub and saw something glistening in a nearby alley. Curious and a little tipsy, they went to check it out. It was their wine cooler. They picked it up, carried it home, and that was that. And that's that for today, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to like and comment and subscribe, and let us know in the comments how you found us, whether you found us through YouTube or Instagram or TikTok or some other way. We love to know where you guys came from, where you guys are currently listening from. And if any of these stories reminded you of your own similar situation, please drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. And until next time.